Talking about you got this and you got that, and you gonna murder this one and murder that one. Talking all that bullshit. I'm gonna put it to you like this, yo.
This is for the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, you ain't gonna touch me, you not gonna do nothing, you are not above me. I bet you wish you was me, I know it, I know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Only Friends podcast. We have an incredible surprise for you guys. Vertucci has broken his silence. We have a statement from the man, the pencil dick himself, the Tooch. Let's hear from him.
Hi, Nick Vertucci here. Listen, guys. Apparently it's the cherry emoji. I had really thought that the orange emoji was more widely used in that context, and for that I apologize. Look, I stepped down from Hustler Casino Live. You win. Even though I think it's absolutely horse shit. I did nothing illegal. And you know the whole thing with the Julia situation? Now a lot of people are saying, don't make me the bad guy here, because a lot of people are saying it, that with the Julia situation, I was just being nice to a disgusting pig woman. Do you see the way she dresses? If your testosterone levels were as high as mine, you wouldn't question why I sent those orange emojis to that disgusting pig woman. And you know, Nadia really hit the head on the head. That situation, not harassment, mostly Julia's fault. Moving on, what's the next one? Kitty Quo? Please, she was laughing her ass off. And you're gonna tell me that she had to move her head? I didn't grab her head and move it. She turned her head to see it. So in that part, it's completely consensual. Ash Kardash? I know no one wants to believe this, but she came on to me. Thank God that Caitlyn is keeping her mouth shut, because that lonely bitch loved the attention. Got a lot of lols and hearts out of that girl, I'll tell you that much. And you know, I never slept with her, but she did come to the door in a towel once after I called her incessantly while she was in the shower of my highly surveilled work office / guest house. And she didn't want me to bring that up, but it happened. Veronica was like a daughter to me. And she can spin it however she wants, but I was a good man to her, and I was a good friend, and I listened to her, and she listened to me. And if I asked to see her tits a few dozen times, I don't think that changes that. Finally, to Lauren. You think you can ruin my life? My wife? She knows who I am. We've been married for 20 plus years. She's not going anywhere. My business? Hustler Casino Live? I built that. They can't take that away from me legally. That's mine. I own that. I'm gonna get my payday. And poker? I didn't invent beautiful women getting flirted with at the table. Flirting! Over flirting! You're canceling me. You woke, liberal, sensitive asses. You think you're going to change anything? Nick Vertucci is always going to have a seat at the table, toots. And don't forget, when you're grab-assing and high-fiving each other that you got rid of me, you remember that you made me. You tuned in and you built my empire for me.
Oh man,
And V out.
and
Kind of dropped the mic on that one.
I got the chills, man. That was incredible. Honestly, like hilarious, of course.
Yes.
As Caitlyn always is. But a little Easter egg in there to anybody who's paying close attention of her own personal experience with Nick, which I saw the uncut version. It was much more in depth. Just go back and rewatch that. Listen to the portion where she talks about how she was staying at his the same place that
his
Veronica
office
stays, her
/
office.
guest house.
Yeah, which apparently just has like hundreds of cameras in it.
Yeah.
And
What?
yeah. And apparently there was an incident where she was in the shower and he was just like calling her nonstop, like trying to get her attention of some sort. I don't know all of the details. They said my mic's echoing.
Nothing on my end.
Sounds good here.
Interesting. Well, I guess only one person said it's echoing, so everybody else said mic's fine. We're getting trolled.
Okay.
God damn it.
Always getting trolled.
Can't read the chat.
I know.
Just don't read the chat.
You can't. What if one person ignore?
Right.
When there's like 20, then it's a problem.
Yeah,
Oh no,
when the
Brian,
child-
you're gonna start an avalanche.
I know. God damn it.
I actually enjoy those moments where Berkey gets trolled by the random
Yeah,
chatter.
I'm sure you do.
I think it's like a genuinely great little tidbit.
Right. Yeah.
And,
Yeah. When it happens here on the pod in the chat, it's a fun little endeavor. When it happens in the Twitter sphere, everybody's unhappy.
That's fair. Bro, Caitlyn gets better every single video.
Yeah,
She's insanely
it's
good
so
at what she
good.
does.
It's impressive to have a single niche, like, and not that she's pigeonholed into this, but like she's really owned it, you know, she's managed to continually recreate off the same fucking character. Like, this is 2.5 years now since she did her first Vertucci.
Well, the thing is, he keeps giving her material.
That's true.
Well, maybe this is the last one, but I think that like if his statement, if it actually does come out, I think it will probably be worse than that.
Yeah, or at least
Somehow it'll be worse.
at least echo that sentiment
Oh, man.
to some degree. I mean, that was really incredible.
Yeah.
She got a little Trumpy with it for a moment there.
I mean,
Well,
People are saying it. I'm not saying it. That was,
yeah.
I don't know. I appreciate that little
do you
weird
not
corner she
think
took.
Nick is not a little Trumpy?
He might. I mean, he comes off that way to me, but I've probably seen less stuff involving him than most people in poker. I didn't. I watched like the biggest HCL episodes, but most of them he wasn't on. I didn't really ever watch his podcast or anything involving him. I didn't really get a good feeling whenever I saw stuff that he did, so I didn't like enjoy it or anything.
Yeah.
It must be upsetting to kind of model yourself. I don't know that he models himself, although he does seem to be a generic version of a bunch of other characters, Joe Rogan, Trump, whatever. But it must be a little bit upsetting. Like, if Trump were facing these same allegations, he would laugh these off so quickly.
Yeah.
Like, he'd be like, you're not fucking canceling me, buddy. I mean, he got accused of grabbing a girl by the pussy, and America just kind of shrugged.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that basically to kind of applaud the poker community in some regard, where it's like, you know what? Our standards are a little bit higher than the general populace when electing a public official. And that's nice.
Yeah.
Way to
It's a
go,
small win.
politicians! You're scummier than the poker
Right.
community.
Now,
Well done, fellas.
Now fucking regulate our game.
Yeah.
Make it legal.
Oh man.
You guys clearly don't care.
Yeah.
Going further down the HCL rabbit hole, Todd Watellis tweeted yesterday that he's been given information that Nick Vertucci has agreed to sell his portion of Hustler Casino Live and will be fully exiting. The timetable of this is unknown. He said, I'd rate the reliability of this info to be high, but not 100%.
Oh, good riddance.
So that answers a lot of partially answers a lot of questions,
Yeah,
I guess.
if true.
Right.
Answers a lot of
If true big. I think that for all parties involved, like I would imagine that this is the best case scenario for Ryan. I would imagine this is the best case scenario for Hustler, and for I can't remember the name of their production company, High Stakes Production, I think.
Yeah. Probably best case scenario for Nick too.
Yeah.
Right. Like he maybe gets a check and gets to just.
Yeah, but it'd be nice
disappear.
to just like passively collect income off of it,
Yeah. No, that's true.
right? Like he did build, for better or for worse.
That is true.
He
But
is a byproduct of this.
we don't know where HCL is going to be in a year after this.
Oh, you think? What are you saying?
I mean, I'm saying I don't know. I don't know where it'll be.
But you're speculating.
I mean, maybe that
Perhaps.
this could possibly hurt their bottom line slightly.
Perhaps. Every time we have an opinion, the ostrich doesn't have to show his face.
Hey, man, I'm just trying to cover our back over here.
Allegedly, they're going to go bankrupt, Burke.
Literally just asking the guy to tell me what he thinks might happen in a year, and this fucking ostrich crops his head
listen,
up.
I appreciate that Guapo has my back because,
course.
you never know what the hell I'm going to say.
That's true.
You keep putting it up there. That's fine. Can't hurt.
I think... Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how all of this shakes out. I don't think we're like anywhere close to this being done. Every day another shoe seems to drop.
Right.
Again, it was very subtle and people probably won't take notice, but Caitlyn kind of exposes her own story with Nick in there. And I was hesitant to bring her name up yesterday when we were talking about people who have come and gone because I didn't know how public she wanted to be with that stuff. It's her story to tell. But, she was one of the faces that went to the Vertucci podcast, co-hosted briefly when Veronica was on her absence, said, "This ain't for me," and got the fuck out of there.
Nice.
So I imagine that shower situation probably helped encourage that. Yeah. There are others. There are plenty more that we haven't heard from.
I mean, can't you just picture Ryan at his desk being like, "I'm never going to financially recover from this."
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, I've been very critical of HCL as a whole. I've been very critical of them as owners. And I do think that Ryan obviously still has his blind spots as well and, doesn't necessarily always get it right. But of the two, he's clearly the more competent when it comes to doing right in real time, or at least correcting course for the most part. Like, I don't know whose decision. Maybe it was a collective one to not shut the stream down and get the security right. Maybe it was mostly Nick. I'm not sure. Doesn't really make that big of a difference. But the point is that I think that he and the show can recover from something like this. Mm-hmm. But I also think that there's a new standard that will be set, that will be expected of them. Right? So, like, one thing should be clear to most, that like when you try to reemerge after a scandal like this, you gotta like demonstrate some sort of proactive change, right? It was the same thing with Jack 4, like, and they did that. They did all the theatrics, right? Like, suddenly everyone's getting wanded down when they're going to the table. That's not doing anything, but it's visually trying to convey confidence. They would put it like in the pre-stream, like, here's Alan Keating, and he's like getting wanded down. Yeah. So it does at least demonstrate that you're actively trying to correct course in some sort of way. And I'm not sure how Ryan will handle that when it comes to building future games, because look, like, somebody said this on my Twitter the other day of like, this is why live poker is so toxic and nobody wants to play it, blah, 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 like, referencing the HCL streams. And I was like, man, I got to tell you, I've been playing live poker for 20 plus years. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying this stuff doesn't happen, but the average HCL game is definitely not representative of what the average live game looks like. And I mean that in the best and worst ways, right? Like, the behavior isn't necessarily the same. The action certainly isn't the same in live public games. Like, generally, you just have a bunch of fucking quiet people who don't bother one another and are playing too goddamn tight for your own tolerance. Right? That's a general live game. HCL is something different. HCL to me is as close as we've seen to a house game where there's, and I say it's close because it's obviously not a direct parallel. Home games are unhinged. They have, the girls working there. They have all the party favors. Everyone's fucked up and doing whatever it is that they want to do. Poker is secondary to all of the other theatrics that are going on in the background. Mm-hmm. But HCL pulls in a lot of that aura, I would say. It's very free-flowing. People don't seem to realize the cameras are on a lot of the time. They say whatever the fuck they want to say. And we get a lot of these moments where, we look at the tape, we review the tape, and it's just like, man, this is no way to behave in modern society.
I can specifically remember a Poker Bunny incident where who's the guy that called you trailer trash?
Oh.
Asian dude.
Yeah. What's his face? He's
I
gone
can't think
now.
of his name either.
Weird. They're all gone now.
Anyways, but yeah, he had
blank check Ben.
he had a whole rant.
Apparently, his check was not blank. The well got tapped, my friend.
Yeah. I remember he had a really big rant about Poker Bunny, and even the commentators were like, "Man, this guy's out of line."
Yeah, and they used. That's the other thing, right? So it's like Ryan's in charge of production, and he made certain calls, like allowing the roving cameraman to just follow Poker Bunny around and zoom in on her ass.
Yeah,
like that was a decision. You made a choice, and I think that like it worked until it didn't, and now some things will have to change, I would imagine, right? Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see the way that this all shakes out.
I mean, I kind of joke to say that they're going to go under.
Well, they might.
They might. But a lot of times when you cut the cancer out, you begin to heal and become healthier for it. So we'll see.
Depends what stage we're at.
Yeah. It was getting close to stage 4, I think.
Yeah.
And got it just in time, maybe.
Well, continuing down that path of potential, I guess, problems for them still to solve. Of course, once somebody speaks out, everybody else who's been holding secrets tends to come forward. We heard from Ash Kardashian a few days ago on the Spaces. I believe that somebody else, Ellie, also revealed her experience with Nick on Spaces. And last night, I haven't gotten a chance to hear it, but he tweeted about it today. Cody kind of told his story on Spaces. And I'll read his tweet first, and then I'll go back and give you the details of what he's referencing. But he said, although my allegation wasn't sexual harassment, Julia and Ash Kardashian and others coming forward finally gave me the courage to speak up. I was highly intimidated by Nick for multiple reasons. I felt like I was getting interrogated when on phone calls, but I'm glad to finally get things off my chest and was beyond blown away by the support by the poker world and by Ryan Feldman. Ryan's is in an incredibly disgusting spot caused by allegations against somebody else that was associated with him. In this whole situation, there's only one person to blame, and that's Nick Vertucci, period. So what Cody is referencing here is last night he came forward and told a story how Nick put together a fundraiser like meetup game of sorts, I guess. I don't know if it was streamed or not. I would guess that it wasn't based off of the ultimate outcome. Maybe it was. It looks like it says, when Cody appeared on Max Payne Monday, Hustler Casino agreed to donate the rake to him for an 8-hour period. Okay, so I guess it was one of the stream games. At the end of the night, Cody talks to somebody at the casino who says it'll take a few days, but they'll be in touch. Sorry. A few days later, Cody calls the casino and is told that Nick is handling it. A month goes by, no money. Cody finally calls Nick, confronts him over it. Nick says, how do you want it? And Cody replies, it's a lot of money. Probably check or money order seems best. Nick says, all right, I'll send you cash. An envelope then arrives, and it's $3K short. This is so mafia.
Bro, mailing money in 2024 is wild.
Insane, man. Just absolutely so insane. So apparently it showed up. It was the total amount was somewhere near 7K. It showed up and it was 3K short. Cody then is apprehensive to call Nick back about it, but finally he gives in and he does. He says that Nick immediately goes he says to Nick the envelope was short. Nick immediately said it's 3K short ? So he already knew the amount without Cody having to tell him. Cody says he doesn't want the money, but Nick says, no, I'll send it. I'll take care of it. Nick never sent it, which means effectively that how you word this, I guess, matters. Like, did he steal? Did he welch? I mean, I assume that the rake is his to begin with, so it's not like he's coming out of pocket, but now it's going in pocket. In any event, he shorted Cody this $3,000 that he had vouched to donate to him for his ailment. I guess Feldman was in space last night. I don't know. Pardon me. I don't know all the details. I'm getting told things second and third handedly because I wasn't listening to the space. And shout out to the guys out there doing the dirty work, running these things at night. But apparently Feldman either was in the space or was told of the space and caught wind of this, immediately made good, sent Cody $3K on Venmo because that's what a normal human in 2024 would do instead of sending a goddamn unmarked envelope via snail mail. And he made Cody whole on the whole thing. I'm not sure what to make of all this. It seems just so weird. Like, it seems like the weird of all the things that he's being accused of, this is the strangest to me.
We were talking about it before the podcast, and we were talking about whether it's theft or like welshing on your word, because it sounded like initially that Nick said, "Hey, I'll give you the rake," and then he didn't send all of the rake, and it's like, is that straight theft or is that going back on your word?
Right.
But now it sounds more like Hustler Casino agreed to give the rake for that 8-hour period. It wasn't coming from Nick's rake.
Right. And then they worked something out with Nick specifically to handle it.
So it sounds like it's just straight up theft by Nick.
Right.
All right, hold on. That's a good spot for the ostrich.
Now we can put the ostrich up. Yeah.
Man, I totally missed that one.
Wait, was the ostrich not Guapo peeking his head around? I thought
No.
That's the ostrich, allegedly. See?
Oh, allegedly.
See, yeah.
Oh, you thought he was referring to me.
Guapo's the ostrich.
I thought you did like that Kevin Hart, like. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
All right, I have a question real quick. If it's only 7 dimes, why not just pay him the day of and just have Hustler square up with Vertucci later?
Right.
Do you understand what I'm
That's a
saying?
very good question.
How does Nick just not come out of pocket and goes, "Oh, $7,000? Okay, here you go."
Yeah.
And then he'll get settled up.
That's what I mean. Like, obviously we don't know all the details here, so we're definitely just like shooting the shit. But yeah, it just of all the things he's being accused of, this is the one that's strangest to me, right? Like,
well, sorry, can I interrupt you?
No, yeah, please.
I don't know everything that goes on and how they do this at casinos, but I would imagine that there's a period of time before they actually know how much rake they collected in an 8-hour period. Yeah, they have to like bring in those little trays that hold all of the I think they have to do some sort of accounting between those trays and what's in the box and some other stuff. Right. And also security has to come in and like take those boxes out, which is probably many hours later. I don't even know how they know different periods. I assume security comes in every 8 hours and takes the boxes out or whatever.
Yeah, probably something like that. But it's also the platform table, so it's not being used outside of the stream.
Oh, so it's just for the game.
It was the stream game. Yeah.
They got $7K in rake in 8 hours from the stream game.
That's what I don't understand. Like a lot. Unless maybe it was like
I assume
all
that
Hustler rake?
Yeah, I assume you meant the whole Hustler Casino.
I truly don't. Again, like I don't know, right? Like I don't know what they meant. So
that seems low. The whole Hustler Casino would seem low, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Is that low for 8 hours?
1K an hour if you're doing say 10 tables. $100.
They only have 10 tables.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It actually doesn't seem that low if it's like there's only. I mean, I've been in there on Mondays where there's only 6 tables.
Okay, I've literally never been there, so I didn't know how big the room was actually.
You could have like an average of 8, and you start with like 4 to 5, and then as the night picks up, it's like 12 or 14. I don't know.
Yeah. Either way, I just find this to be the oddest of all the things he's being accused of, and it's one of those things where it's like, I'm glad Cody got to come forward and I'm glad he got made whole. Would be a shitty scenario to give him a bad taste in his mouth from the poker community, which he's been around long enough. I'm sure he has enough negative experiences as it is.
Not to double back, but that does sound like something Trump would do.
Right. Just like,
right. Just be like,
forgot about that whole not paying the worker thing.
Right. And I think he had he was going to run some fundraiser instead of doing a debate. This was back in 2016. And then he's going to give all the money to veterans or something. Just never did. Yeah.
It's just strange. Yeah. It's just strange. I mean, maybe there's a world where he,
I'm glad Cody eventually got the money. I mean, that's good. That Ryan made him whole and everything. So
yeah, I agree. You've kind of been on the sidelines for this whole thing. What do you think of how this is all shaken out, Jess?
The whole Hustler thing?
Yeah.
The whole thing.
I mean, I find it kind of comical because I don't know. For me, and I don't think that I have the best reads on people of all the people I know, especially about character or whatever. I generally tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. But it seemed incredibly obvious that this dude was at least a little sleazy.
Yeah.
And then if you just take a trip to Better Business Bureau, which when that whole Jack Forehand ordeal happened, I went over there to see the complaints about his past business. It's like really bad. So I find the whole thing like a little bit, I mean, not the sexual allegations. That's not funny.
No, of course.
But I find like the whole thing kind of comical because it's like, it's almost like, what did you think he was like?
Right. Yeah.
You know, I assume that everyone kind of just were like, okay, like he's, I don't know. So, I guess it's like everything else that happens. The outrage is kind of weird, or it's not the outrage is weird, but like the shock of it is like a little bit weird to me. Yeah. I also think that the immediate distancing of like everyone that previously worked with him, which like I guess is necessary, but okay. So when you combine the fact that it was like probably somewhat obvious to anyone without like extreme bias, like probably financial bias.
This platform wasn't shocked.
Yeah. Well, I know you guys weren't shocked, but it's like when you combine the fact that like it seemed obvious to an outside observer like myself, and that everyone's like distancing themselves now, like those two things are kind of comical to me. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, I don't think you just get to pretend like you had no idea that this guy was capable or acting like this
right
after the fact. Like that's kind of how I feel. Now, like, is everyone the same? Like, definitely not. I'm sure there are people who are like much closer to him. Or there are people like who are further away. I'm sure there are people who came in and just did commentary and left, for instance, and you know, had other stuff going on in their life. But just like interesting to watch the whole thing develop. And
yeah, I think that is a pretty good take. I wonder how much of this starts a snowball effect. Like, Nick's not alone in the poker community as far as like who he represents. There are plenty of dudes like Nick. Mm-hmm. They're just a lot less public. They don't start their own podcast. They don't run their own production show. And, you know, that amount of power that he positioned himself to have is what's made him a very large target. But I just like wonder, for a long time, we've just been continually having this back and forth of how do we get more women in the game? And the conversation tends to always steer once we, you know, when we ask women, like, what's the barrier? Conversation tends to steer towards the level of like misogyny, being uncomfortable, being talked down to, being accosted in a public arena and things of that nature. And it makes me now wonder, like, okay, with this kind of getting out there, do we start to see more accusations? And if so, you know what I mean? Because like this is kind of what happened in the Me Too thing, right? It started in Hollywood, and then it just started to spill over.
Starts with one person, then it's two, and then it's 10.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And look, I get it. I always worry about the pendulum effect, right? Where it's like this stuff's all happening behind closed doors, and once you open the floodgates and give the power to the victims to start being vocal and calling out their abusers and things like that, it's very easy for people to rally behind that. It's a good cause to rally behind, and it's an easy thing to support. But then you have the corrective course, right? Where there will always be people on the fringes that are using this to leverage advantage, right? Mm-hmm. There always will be bad actors. So I wonder, basically what I'm saying is I wonder if this will lead to more discovery within our own community, where we can start to like clean out our own closets kind of thing, and you know, industry wide sweep things up. And if so, I wonder if we're equipped to handle it.
That's a question, right?
Yeah, I find that really, like what you said, really important, because I noticed myself thinking about different interactions that I've watched go down at the poker table, and I didn't say enough about it. And maybe they weren't like sexual harassment, but they were like harassment.
Mm-hmm.
And like sometimes it was maybe like just some guy being meaner to a girl.
Right.
Because like maybe sees her as an easy target or whatever. And I didn't say anything. And it made me feel bad about that and think about what I could do better. And think about like, just like why maybe I let that slide, or maybe I, in my mind, I justify as, it was like one little comment. And if he stops, like if he says another thing, maybe I'll say something.
Yeah.
But like why we let that kind of stuff slide. And like the more years you spend in the poker world, the more you realize like all of the reasons that you gave yourself of why you didn't immediately say something are kind of bullshit. Like, like this guy's good for the game. Maybe like she doesn't want me to say anything. It's like, dude, there's like a million people good for the game. They come and go, and like not all of them are assholes to women or to anyone. You know what I mean? Or to dealers.
It is a tricky dynamic to navigate, though, because there are a lot of women who want to stand on their own 2 feet in that instance.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I don't want to speak for somebody else. But at the same time, it's like, if you always say I don't want to speak for someone else, then you just never do anything about anything.
Correct.
And that's kind of silly too.
I think the sweet spot here is how you approach it. And I've thought about this a lot, because it doesn't happen so much in my games because, they're vetted. So I'm not just in a public game where random's showing up all that often, but there are women who play in the game often, and there are a few guys who are just like the worst. And oftentimes they are the best for the game. So it's like, it's easier for me because like these girls are my friends, and I could just talk to them away from the table and just be like, where are the boundaries at with what you're willing to deal with from this asshole? And, then you can kind of insert yourself. But I think what it comes down to is,
when you say the worst, are they like being directly at them, like doing shit, or just not
they're
being
just
aware
like,
of their surroundings and saying stuff that's kind of out of line?
No, they're the worst. Like they will directly be misogynistic. They're just like born from that great era where women are beneath them. And oftentimes like I think it's a cultural difference too, because oftentimes they're not first generation Americans, right? Like they're from some other part of the world where maybe they're not quite as progressive. So to them, it's not that ridiculous to kind of just accost people in general, and then on top of that, like people that their culture may deem to be inferior. But anyway, where I was going with this is, if you're ever unsure of whether or not a woman wants you to speak up for her or not, I think the difference is like how heavy-handedly you speak up, right? Like,
you make a spectacle of it, then
right. The difference between white knighting and just like kind of like slapping somebody on the wrist is gently nudging somebody versus like, standing up in your chair and be like, enough's enough.
Right.
And it's like there's times for both.
Yeah.
But I agree with Jesse. I think in general, we don't like to rock the boat in a public setting, and rarely do we want to escalate stuff, especially if it seems like it'll have some sort of like short-term downside. And the risk of being wrong also feels like it's very weighty. You know what I mean? Like maybe they do just have like some sort of like playful rapport that you're unaware of, or something like that. Now but again, it's one of those things where it's like it's better to
err on the side of caution.
Yeah, I almost said over police, but like I disagree with that statement. So it's like, I think it's just better to err on the side of caution in the sense of like gently doing things, whether it's kind of shooting a glance at the girl, being like, "Are you okay with this?"
That's what I was about to ask.
Yeah.
Maybe that's better, just asking her like, "Hey, you good?"
Right. Honestly, you know who this is. I feel very strongly about this. Women have it very tough in poker, but I would say that the majority that play kind of know what they're signing up for. And I don't mean that in a sense of like they asked for it. I just mean it in the sense of like they're a little bit more grizzled and thick-skinned. It's the dealers that I feel the worst for.
Yeah. A lot of times,
people treat them as though like they are just not human.
Right.
And I don't mean it in the sense of like they're being blatantly awful to them. I mean it in a disrespectful sense. Like, there's been plenty of times where I'm in a game that's all men and there's a male dealer in the box and people just let it flow. They just let it fly. And to that, it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. Like, I'm not gonna be social justice warrioring here. If you want to talk about like tits and ass, whenever it's all dudes at the table, I don't think it's that big of a deal. But then like a female dealer will sit down, especially one that like English isn't their first language, and they'll just treat them as though they don't understand what's going on around them.
Right.
That's like, dude, have a little bit of couth.
Right.
Like this is, I've seen dealers
and it happens from the smallest stakes all the way to the highest. Because
probably worse the highest stakes.
Maybe in the small. I don't know.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, actually, you're right. You're right. I take it back.
I play some of those small stakes, and that exact same thing happens. And I just want to be like, are you completely unaware of your surroundings? Like what? Like you're literally sitting right next to this female dealer, and you're just saying the most unbelievable shit. I'm like, bro, like tone it down.
Tone it down.
I mean, there's a guy. There's a guy that plays in our game, and like every time he comes, he feels the need. And to be fair, it's provoked often because I think people just like know that this is his shtick. But like every time he comes to the game, he'll talk about how getting a handy at a massage parlor is not cheating.
Jeez,
but like that
every time.
But I said it like
how often in his life does he talk about this?
I said it in the tamest way. Like he goes really hard about it. And then he'll give the counter example of like,
I didn't know you got to play with Robert Kraft. That's nice. Right. That's awesome.
Right, yeah. Then he'll like give counter examples. Like they'll start the question. They'll be like, "Well, what if you're white?" And he'll just go into great detail of like what he considers to be fine and not fine. And it's like there are like 65-year-old female dealers in the box, just like in all my years, I've never heard someone speak this way.
I would like to use this opportunity to once again pitch you guys on playing mixed games. Yeah, sure. Because they are always nice to the dealers at the mixed games.
Are they?
No, they're fucking terrible. Of course,
they're terrible humans.
Have you ever been to well, you haven't, but if you ever go to like a 1,500 mixed game event at the World Series where there's a brand new dealer, oh my God.
Well, that's carried over well beyond mix.
But there's some sort of holding back at the no limit, whereas it's wild, man.
I think.
How did you fall into that world? You don't seem like they're your typical limit player.
I like games.
Yeah,
I like games in general, and so like learning mixed games has been. It reminds me of learning no limit back in the day. It's like really exciting, and like you're making these big gaps in your learning very quickly. Whereas in no limit, it's like these tiny little.
Been playing the same thing over and over.
Yeah, so I like that a lot. You like where I took this one, Berkey?
I do. I actually really, I greatly appreciate that pivot, to be quite honest. I think that the big difference between limit and mixed games versus no limit when it comes to dealer abuse is that there will always at least be one patient person at a no limit table who's just like, hey, it's their first day.
Yeah.
Fucking relax. Okay.
Yeah, true.
We're only going to get 15 hands in this hour anyway. Do you really care if it's 18? There's always one voice of reason. In a limit table, no voice of reason.
No.
They've been sitting there for 35 years waiting to realize they're one big blind an hour expectation.
Or they're minus one big blind. They still want to do it very quickly.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Precisely
Winning
true.
or losing, they want those cards out as soon as possible.
It's truly incredible. Like John Monet is like the most notorious for this, Angry John.
Oh yeah.
Where I only know him off the felt. I've never really played with him. I think I played the main event with him for like an hour once, and I didn't even recognize him because he had a long fucking beard grown out. But everybody who has a John Monet story is just like he's the absolute angriest person at the table.
Angry John.
Off the felt, he's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
He's the nicest guy I've ever fucking come across. Like it's just such a weird juxtapositioning, I guess.
I had a dealer one time. He was telling me about different poker players, and he was like, "Yo, last week I was dealing in Bobby's room." He's like, "And Monet tipped me. Didn't say a word the whole time, and then on my way out, he pulled me aside and told me I did a great job." He's like, "I don't know what drugs they got him on right now." He's like, "But they found the perfect recipe." And then like a month later, I guess he was back to his normal. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, At least it lasted for a little while.
Yeah, they got some reprieve there.
Yeah, it's nice. Well, while we're talking about things getting destroyed, I'd be remiss if we didn't play the implosion of the Trop. Sayonara to the dustiest casino that I've ever played. Do you remember our first trip to Vegas ever? No, you can play it. You can play it. We don't need sound. Do you remember we initially booked the Trop?
Right.
You guys made the first trip to Vegas together?
Yeah.
Aww.
Well, was it?
Well, yeah. It was me, you, Greg.
No, I was there before that. I came out with the Johnstown boys.
No.
Sorry.
Oh,
and I came out with the
Unbelievable.
Johnstown boys
Turtle.
for
So fucking brutal.
Unbelievable.
Actually, to be honest, this actually might not have been my first trip either, because I think the first trip we stayed at Excalibur.
Yeah.
But this one, I think this was the trip where we were going to move out here and we were signing the lease.
There were a bunch of trips to Vegas in that 1 or 2 year time.
So we
frame.
book a room at the Trop. Obviously, like when you don't live here, and at our age we were like 25, I had never left Pennsylvania. Well, that's not true, but I'd never flown anywhere.
Yeah.
I'd driven plenty of places, but never flown anywhere. So we just do what anybody does. You look for an affordable place. So
I'm sorry, your first flight was at 25 years old?
25, yeah.
Wow.
Same with me.
Bro.
When I was 3, we went to Disney World, and then I literally hadn't been on a plane or like a flight since.
You wanted to go somewhere. You hauled ass.
Yeah.
I drove to Tennessee. I drove to Florida. I drove to South Carolina, North Carolina, Maryland.
Yeah, we drove to Disneyland from Massachusetts.
You're goddamn right you did.
Yeah.
Those flights are expensive.
Yeah.
Probably $172 each way.
I remember we stayed at the Econo Lodge too.
Wow.
There you go. Yeah.
That was a highlight.
Of all the families in Martha's Vineyard, you guys were really slumming it.
But the Trop.
Right. So we booked the Trop. We didn't know any better. And this was before the renovations. Not that the renovations did a ton, but we show up. It was 4 of us, me, you, Greg, and Garrity, I believe. We go to our rooms and walk in, and honest to God, I shit you not, it looked like a fucking murder scene.
Yeah.
It looked like something out of CSI Las Vegas from the late 70s. The bathroom had like the 80s style shower tub combo where it's like literally the trashiest porcelain bathtub you've ever seen, fixed into the wall with the like single shower head that looks like it came out of a prison locker room, and we look in the tub and it just has this red ring around it the whole way.
We're like, did someone get murdered here?
Like there was a hooker dead in this tub for sure for many, many, many days before they found her. Couldn't get the stains on. They said, fuck it, we ball. We'll give it to these idiots from Pittsburgh.
And you think we're like, yeah, we could deal with it. But we're like, let's get the hell out of there. Yeah. We end up at the
nice.
Yeah, so we end up going from that to a suite at the Venetian.
Right. For like the same price.
Yeah. We're like, oh, wait, there's a poker room or a poker rate? And they're like, yeah, if you play 6 hours a day. We're like, oh, we're definitely going to play 6 hours a day.
Right.
That's easy, right? They're like, yeah, you're going to get this. And it was literally maybe like a couple dollars more.
Yeah, so this was like 2007. Venetian's
living it up.
Venetian's basically brand new. They're an all-suite hotel. So you show up. It's like 2 queen beds, a pool out, a living room, a little mini fridge and everything.
Giant screen.
What the fuck were we doing at the Tropicana?
We just had no idea. We had no idea.
No clue.
Right.
No. I mean, we stayed at Excalibur.
Right. You go to Vegas.com, you see whatever the cheapest one is. It seems like that's fine. Click and go.
Yeah.
Nobody really talks about how good the Venetian rooms are, I feel like, but they're up there.
Yeah, and I think Palazzo's probably even nicer.
I'm sure it's newer. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, okay, maybe Wynn rooms are slightly nicer, right?
Aria rooms are really,
but they're like 40% of the price of a Wynn room or something ridiculous like that.
Right.
And they're so, like, you have 2 rooms. I don't know. I'm going on a tangent here, but they're really
no,
nice
you're
rooms.
not
do
wrong.
that here.
I hate on the Venetian a lot, so it's nice to actually say give them some
they're
props.
under new ownership now. Yep. They got that new room. I have high hopes for the Venetian.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for that. The thing is like, when it comes to Vegas properties that have poker rooms, we need to be critical because we want things to be done in a certain way that's beneficial to the local economy. But also, like, it sucked when the Venetian was run by Sheldon. and that we had to kind of like hate on them because there aren't that many rooms that are pumping out tournaments day after day and bringing in WPT and shit like that. So it was like really tough to not support them for all those years.
Their first WPT, do you remember that? They put it in the middle of the pit.
No.
At the Palazzo. Oh my God, it was a nightmare.
Right.
That wasn't the first one, I don't think. But I do remember what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was the summer after they had the convention space.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so they had the convention space the one summer, which I actually thought was amazing.
That was awesome.
Yeah, it was like playing in an airplane hangar.
It was, dude. They had like stands off by where the final tables were played and stuff. Like it was really cool.
It was very spacious. It was great. And then the year to follow,
You had to walk them out to get there, but
right? Well, not if you parked in the convention parking lot. Yeah, I gotta. But yeah, then the year that followed, they did everything at Palazzo side, and I remember what you're talking about because I showed up and tried to register at the Venetian on the Venetian side, and I got booted because it was only for WPT winners. And Dean Eggs fucking big time the shit out of me. He's like, "Oh, this is the winners line. Take your ass to Palazzo." It's like, okay.
so you took your ass to Palazzo.
Took my ass to Palazzo, and it was a long fucking line. And yeah, it was like in the middle of hell. Like smoke everywhere. When they do those on the floor type of things, I get it. They need the space, and we kind of have to suck it up. But like, Wynn's the only one that gets it right, where they convert their entire sports book to poker, and they're still non-smoking.
They keep the smoke out somehow. Whereas Palazzo is also near slots, but there's smoke everywhere when you play in there.
Yeah.
The Wynn does a good job with that. I don't know how they pulled that off.
Must have a good ventilation system or something.
Yeah. Physics work differently at the Wynn Hotel and Casino. I don't know.
Aria too. Aria does it right outside of their poker room. Never really any issues with like smoke or anything like that.
Aria is a super underrated tournament spot because they don't traditionally run tournaments.
Right.
And so when you hear about one, you're like,
They also don't get like the biggest, like, you're not going to have like a 2,000 runner field.
Yeah.
I think they have like maybe 40 tables when they expand during the summer.
But I've heard the fields are great for the bigger buy-ins compared to comparable ones. It actually, what's funny to me? I think during the summer, World Series is one of the worst fields to be in at any price point now. It's like the fields are bigger. Yeah. Because like there's like this mentality where a lot of people come out to play just one 1,500 or two 1Ks. And they play the shit out of them, and they fold like the second nuts if it's close.
Right.
And like, yeah, you can obviously beat those players, but it's like you're not getting any free money. Whereas like at the Wynn, you get these guys who show up to go to the Wynn, and like, oh, maybe I'll splash around this tournament. You get a lot of people like that. And then I don't know what goes on at Aria, but I've just heard those fields are amazing. And it's like maybe the World Series is actually like
the tougher fields.
Yeah,
maybe.
I don't know.
It's definitely possible. Because like in the past, the off properties represented opportunities for the lower buy-ins. So the guy that's playing like an average buy-in of $500 was almost always just exclusively playing off property, maybe taking a shot at like a 1,500 here and there. Might play like 6 World Series events in the summer. But now the younger generation is like so adept and able to get their hands on money that they immediately just jump into the deep end, And so anybody who considers himself a tournament player in any capacity just puts a full schedule together at the series. So you do get a higher concentration, I think, of regs. And then oftentimes they just end up at these off-property spots maxing, which, now they're kind of diluting their skill. So you don't mind it all that much if that's the only place that you're playing. Do you remember the old poker room at the M? They used to run that 2,500, 3 million.
Everyone talks
every
about
summer.
how it was like the secret tournament, and then you get there, and every reg you've ever met is there.
But it really was like one of the softest events of the summer.
It was
every single year.
They'd satellite in hundreds of people across the year. It was a really cool event.
Baldy
it was like
probably
their
won
main
it like
event,
3
basically.
times.
Yeah.
Who won it?
I said Baldy probably won it like 3 times.
Oh my God, that's such a Baldy tournament.
Such a Baldy
ridiculous.
tournament, for sure. Yeah. Like somehow it's the only place that's close to where he lives in fucking Arizona. I'm just make my way over to the M, cash my usual check.
Yo, if Baldy hasn't won the Arizona State Poker Championship randomly, I would be surprised. That's like a 2,000 player field, and I feel like he's a lock to have won it in the last 10 years.
Yeah. That's like Hanks. He won the California State Championship.
Did he?
Yeah. Got the Bear trophy.
No,
Let's go.
Bear, that's right.
Well, it's a nice segue that you bring up satelliting hundreds of players in, because the NAPT is coming to Vegas here early November, and they're doing exactly that. But they are satelliting as well, but they're just giving seats away.
That's what you want to see.
That's really what you want to see.
Right.
You don't want people to have some sort of skill that got them in the event.
No.
You just want them to be fucking gifted a
Bro,
nice little package.
My first main event I ever played at the World Series, I had a guy at my table who won a raffle in his town, and he had no idea how to play poker.
That's amazing.
Incredible.
No idea. It was the great, and also it was weird because he didn't know how to put the right number of chips in to call a bet. But it's like, you've used money before.
Yeah.
So I was really lost about that part, but he was like the dream. Anyways.
No, this is great. Great aside. So hopefully he'll be playing this NAPT main event.
Yeah.
Stars is giving away 100 gold passes. You guys have probably seen some of the competitions. Currently, Poker.org is doing Runner or some version thereof right now, which as more clues come out, we'll pay attention to that. I always enjoy that contest. We also have a gold pass to give away, which I'm pretty excited about. We've been doing a bit of a scavenger hunt, if you will, Jesse. We've been putting out 2 clues a week. Our second clue came out today. This is the first clue. Just take note, it's Las Vegas in a little encapsulation there, if you will. That's clue number 1. Today's clue number 2. So this is the second clue. Know that they go sequentially. Eventually you're going to have a 5-part puzzle to put together, which will lead you to the final clue. Whoever answers that final clue correctly is going to win the gold pass. It's that simple. So easy.
So you just have to be the first one to answer.
Just got to be first. Put the puzzle together first. That's it.
All right.
And then we're going to be giving away a 10K NAPT Gold Pass. It's worth 10K. The main event itself is a 5,300. You'll also be getting a 7-day stay and accommodations at Resorts World, as well as $1,800 in travel expenses. So just cash on hand once you arrive to the venue. I think we're going to announce the winner Friday, October 25th. So that'll give you a solid 2.5 weeks to handle your accommodations. I think that's plenty of time. Yeah. The final clue will go out Monday. Monday, October 21st. And then if we don't have a winner by the 25th, we'll give you a little more breadcrumbs between the 21st and 25th. But I anticipate somebody sharp out there, they're going to put it together.
They're going to get it.
They're going to put it together. So head over to @onlyfriends_pod if you want to pay attention to the clues. Be sure you follow along. We're going to be putting out clues every Monday and Thursday. We'll also be giving you helpful hints every Tuesday and Friday on the podcast. All right. Let's get to the main bit today. A little more disrespect being put on the name of the GOAT. Or maybe just the minor league GOAT, if you will. Bryn Kenney took quite the shot here at Hellmuth. He recently did an interview, or a podcast, I should say, with, who did he do this with? Sean Kelly, who's been cranking out the content, by the way. This is like the 10th poker player he's interviewed in like the last week. So Bryn goes on, we'll play the clip here shortly, but he basically calls Hellmuth out, says that he's not in the same league as him, and that he's a coward for not wanting to play him heads up. You want to roll that beautiful bean footage.
A lot of people label Hellmuth as like the tournament GOAT, but I'd love to hear your opinion because he doesn't really play in the higher stakes tournaments like you do.
Yeah, he's the biggest winning WSOP player. He has his career, which is impressive too. He's played a lot of big field tournaments and has been successful in those throughout time, even winning bracelet events. But he's played some high rollers and hasn't really fared very well in them. And I think when you think about who are the best players in poker, if you're not competing at the highest level, you can't really be in contention for it. You know, it's almost like you could be the head of some subcategory that exists somewhere else.
Right, like a casual tournament.
Yeah, like, you know, WSOP, he's number one in WSOP, like, player. Okay, cool, but, you know, WSOP has huge fields. What about when you play the small fields with the best players?
Yeah.
Then you really see how good you are at poker. Because, like, year after year, if you're winning in those, then you're, like, standing the test of time versus the people who are at the top of their game. But if you're playing against mostly amateur players who are at the World Series, like, you're great at beating the amateur players. It's like, you know, he could be the king of AAA or something.
Yeah.
But he's not really in the majors.
Yeah, because when you say tournament player, you got to include the high roller events. Like,
yeah, and then you could say, like, oh, that they're, like, lucky, those ones, small fields lucky. But you get lots of play, and you're playing versus the toughest people. There's no luck involved from year in, year out.
Right.
Maybe in one specific tournament.
Yeah, but not year after year.
Yeah, so we'll give him the king of AAA.
He thinks he's the GOAT of everything.
Well, I mean...
But a lot of
he
people
says that he is.
Yeah, he
online.
self-proclaims. Yeah.
He doesn't want to play me heads up. He doesn't want. You know, if he's looking to ever make like a huge bet in the World Series, like I'll consider playing a whole WSOP series.
Okay.
And show him that he's not even the best at those either.
Wow. You just don't want to commit to the big fields.
It's just like too much, especially if you make a bet like that. You're playing every day for a month and a half.
10 hours a day.
And
right?
I've just put so much time into poker already. Like, I love poker, and I don't think you could really get to the top without loving what you do.
What do you guys think? Bryn nail this one, or is he out of pocket?
I mean, I think he's right about a lot of it until he calls it the AAAs. I mean, I get why he calls it the AAAs, but I just think of it as, I think differently than him. I think that it's a different skill set almost.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that many of the people who do well in the high rollers would have could match Hellmuth's win rate at the World Series tournaments. I think it would take like some serious adjusting by them, and
agreed.
And he just has like a very good talent for that. So I just think of those things as different.
You think he'd be a favorite versus Bryn? If they made a bet like he suggested in the World Series.
I don't know. Bryn's a different animal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Bryn is impressive at figuring stuff like that out, but I mean, at first,
he's definitely more of the Phil player, I guess you would say, like closer to Phil.
Well,
yeah.
If they include all the games, Phil's obviously a favorite.
Oh yeah.
Bryn certainly doesn't play mix well.
I don't think he would. But I think he was specifically meaning large field, no limit events.
Yeah, but like
talking about.
But like, fuck you. That's not fair.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like, judge the man on his entire resume.
Right.
Don't just cherry pick what suits you. That's not the way this works. It has to be apples to apples.
Yeah. If you're specifically talking no limit hold'em, it's different because like you have to think about poker as a whole, right? And there are many other games, as you know, with these mixed games, and so it's
thanks, buddy.
Right? Yeah.
I also think like the metrics by which they made the wager would matter a lot, because if it's a bracelet bet, I think Hellmuth is a slight favorite. Because I do think Bryn has an edge in the small field big buy-ins that Hellmuth may not even play, but Hellmuth is going to get way more volume in at the mixed game level, and he's just going to be a significant favorite in those compared to Bryn playing the 500 opener, you know, or the fucking 1K mystery bounty. So how they qualify the bet matters, because you can't do it based off money, right? Like Phil winning a $1,500 deuce to 7 for 90K is not the same as Bryn ripping off the 250K for 5 million.
Right.
So that can't be the qualifier.
I think it would have to be like World Series Player of the Year list or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
Bryn will play mixed games. I'm pretty sure he plays them. And
sure. Well, he would have to.
Yeah.
To back up this statement, he would have to.
Yeah.
Right. But going back to what you said, where you think differently than him, I very much align with you. And maybe this is a take people aren't going to like, but to me, we've been seeing this a lot, like over the last 4 or 5 years. It's a lot of chest puppet or like pounding the chest, and a lot of bragging about playing the highest stakes in these sort of like small field turbo-y type of events. And all that.
That's funny. Sorry to cut you up, but that's Bryn acted like there's a lot of play. There's small fields, but there's a lot of play. So you're calling him turbo-y.
Yeah, but he's just wrong.
Yeah, especially like I know, like when he said it, I thought about like the Poker Go studio events, right? Those are pretty fast.
And it's not there's anything wrong with.
I'm not exactly sure about the Triton. Structures.
Most of these high rollers are 30 or 40 minute levels. I guess there are probably some main events that may be an hour.
Mm-hmm.
The World Series ones are an hour. I know that. But nevertheless, where I was going with this is that, effectively when he's talking about the high rollers being the majors and everything else being the minors, that to me is all the online guys who were claiming that the best live players couldn't beat 500 Zoom. And it's like, well, that's because there just isn't a ton of win rate in the pool. It's like the pool is doing something. The pool is calibrated in a specific way where it just would not be worth the transition. It's not that the capabilities are not there. And I think that that's kind of how I feel about the high roller scene. It's not that I don't recognize that all of the talent is pooled there. It absolutely is. The best of the best are all playing high rollers for sure. But the notion that we have any idea who is talented based off of results over the last 5 to 10 years in that pool is insane. Because the skill level or the win rate available is relatively low. And I'm using people who know way, way more about this stuff than me, like Ike. I think he's been on record as saying that he imagines the average edge to be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 3%, and maybe on the fringes somewhere in the neighborhood of like 8 to 10. So if your ROIs are that skinny,
amongst the winning players,
correct? Yeah. So if ROIs range that low, then it's very difficult to crown a winner in any capacity over a sample that's like, less than substantial. And I'm not exactly sure what will qualify substantial in this instance, but it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like 100,000 games, right? Maybe you start to get a glimmer of it at like 20,000 games, but like no one in the high roller scene is going to play anything close to that in their lifetime. So what are we really talking about here? Like, I understand poker's always going to, kind of distill down to an ego contest and a battle of who is more arrogant than the next. But like, there's a world where Bryn's just been sun running the last decade,
Yeah.
It's not out of the question by any stretch. And I would think a lot of his peers, and this is not to throw shade to Bryn, but I would imagine a lot of his peers in the high roller scene don't see him as a threat in the field. It's just he's done a lot of goated shit, like call his shot in the $1 million buy-in and not only win it, but also crossbook himself to, make the buy-in bigger than it already was, where the majority of the field is doing the opposite. They're laying off risk because the win rate is so incredibly small. And look, that shit is stuff that we write books about. That's the stuff movies are made of. Somebody overextending themselves in an event where they need to win it now in order to become the hero, and then they just go out and fucking do it. That's legendary shit. But let's not dismiss Hellmuth's track record. For all of his faults, you cannot deny what this man has done. And I think another great example of this would be somebody like Alti or somebody like Darren Elias. Their track records in open fields are second to none. Do they convert all that well to small field, high buy-in, fast structure events? No, because it's a totally different skill set, right? Like the edges and where you're winning are so reduced and so small. And maybe that's a byproduct of like, well, there's a lot more ICM in the small field fast structure, right? Maybe that's true. I'm not sure. Maybe it's true that they've found pockets within the ICM model that are kind of broken that they can take advantage of in the open field events because the field largely is unaware. And now they're forced to navigate their own like kind of model that we don't even have a glimpse of, or maybe it's not even tangible. But the point is like, this is so disrespectful to somebody that's like had an illustrious career that I've taken plenty of fucking shots at. I don't think he's winning 100Ks. I really don't. And even though his track record, he kind of put it out there and said like, look, I've played high rollers and I've done okay.
So, yeah, when he mentioned that he had 1.5 million or something in high rollers, but he said check the Hendon mob.
I think it's
mean
might even
cashes?
more. I wouldn't be surprised if that's profit because he finished 4th in the super high roller bowl that I got.
Because if it's
that alone,
obviously
was
it's much more impressive if it's profit compared to just cashes.
Well, it can't be cashes. I'm telling you, he got 4th in the super high roller bowl that I got 5th in. That alone was like 1.5.
What was your score in that?
1.1.
Yeah, so that's 1.5.
So that alone is like 1.5. And he's certainly played more than one.
Yeah.
He's cashed more than one.
That's his only cash.
No.
I'm joking.
No. He's made a fair amount of final tables. So like him being up 1.5 million wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
And most, I got to tell you, a lot of the guys that you would
Again,
cross-book,
very small sample size.
Of course. But a lot of the guys that you would cross-book against Hellmuth in a big buy-in probably aren't up 1.5 million in those buy-ins. And that's obviously doesn't matter. It's anecdotal.
Right.
But, you know, if we're going to argue anecdotes, which is largely what Bryn's doing here by puffing his chest, you know, show me somebody who has a better track record.
I do think there's something to be said for if you're not willing to participate in the biggest buy-ins, then you can't quite claim GOAT status.
That's fair.
Like that's somewhat fair.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's this very real thing where it doesn't make sense quite often to play the biggest buy-ins outside of ego.
Right.
I have a couple friends who are at some point in the last like 5 to 10 years were arguably one of the better MTT players on the planet. And they played the high rollers for a little bit and, you know, they sold a bunch of pieces off or whatever. And they just looked at it and they were like, this doesn't make sense for me. Like I have a 50+% ROI in buy-ins under 5K and maybe like 100% ROI in these 1,500 like big field events. And then I'm playing like 100K. I'm selling down to like only having like a 25K piece of myself, which is a huge piece in a tournament, obviously. And I've got like a 5 to 10% ROI. So I'm actually making less money playing 100K than I am playing like a 3,500 or a 50. It's like crazy.
20 years ago, I mean, like part of the skill of being a poker player was to find the best games, find your edge, find the games that you were definitely beating, right? That now it seems like, oh, I have to play. I'm trying, you know, like you said, it's an ego thing where I'm going to play the highest buy-in even though my ROI is smaller because I want to, you know, which I understand. Like if you want to compete, trying to compete against the best, but if you're trying to make money, it's a different kind of skill set, right?
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't mean the ego thing necessarily is a bad thing. I mean, everything involved in the ego is not great. But
people want to challenge themselves. They want to be the best.
See if you're the best,
by playing against the best, right?
It's more like a competitive thing than an ego thing or something like that. But I do think that that's like the main reason to do that. Unless you're like, there are definitely guys in the high rollers who actually have most of themselves at this point. And a lot of them were big, high stakes online cash game crushers back in the day and made a lot of money.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people in those tournaments, when you play 100K, you've kept like 20% of yourself or something like that. Or you found a backer, which is kind of a unicorn situation in the poker world. You get a backer for $100,000+ tournaments, but they're out there.
Yeah. I think that I think maybe that's why it rubs me the wrong way when people are just like, LOL, you can't beat high rollers kind of thing. Because from my perspective, yeah, I agree. Like we want to measure people based off of their knowledge and their ability to execute. But the more that we understand that the most optimal version of being able to play this game is being able to compete against the computer, the more boring that sounds to me. Right. And the less I actually would contribute that to being talent. Right. Like the person who mimics the solve the closest to me, I don't mean to downplay that because I think it's an incredible ability to do it. But like that to me isn't really all that talent based. It's just like rote memorization and pattern recognition and, you know, kind of being able to tie it all together. It's not like you're modeling your thoughts in a way that allow you to perfectly replicate the sim. Maybe like there's somebody out there who is able to kind of like program themselves similarly. But the point that I'm trying to arrive at is it's all for naught if you're not actually competing in that sort of stable environment where everything replicates the vacuum that you're studying. And to me now, the talent is the ability to continually increase your earning power. So for instance, somebody asked me the other day, not really in poker, but like poker adjacent, just kind of understands who the people are. They said, are you a better cash game player than Linus Love? And I laughed and said, no shot. Like technically speaking, he's going to mop the floor with me. I have a loose technical understanding of the game. He has a very precise technical understanding of the game, and he's going to execute as such. I said, but I think there's a chance that my earning potential is higher than his. And it's not just because of the game selection that is available to me that's not available to him, but it's also a byproduct of how my precision is in separating people who are playing poorly from their money. Whereas somebody who is very precise to theory and kind of unwavering is going to miss a lot of the obvious exploits that will earn them extra dollars, either through a raise or a fold or a call that isn't theoretically correct. And I think that that's like a pretty fair measuring stick. Does it put me in the same conversation as Linus? Probably not, and that's okay. But the point I'm trying to make here is that when you extrapolate that out to people who actually are in the sphere of being able to navigate all these realms, the best of the best, the goats of the goats, and Bryn qualifies for this, are going to be guys that are against the grain and aren't necessarily just in a lab 24/7 in their basement trying to get to the point where they're no longer making 0.01 EV errors on the river.
It could be a reason why he's done so well in these high roller events. I mean, maybe he throws a monkey wrench into like everybody's plan, and then it kind of ends up on an island somewhere. And
truly tough to know.
Yeah, it really is.
It's tough to know where variance ends and skill begins.
I do want to believe that there's a difference between Linus and the high roller pools in general. And I do want to believe there's more going on than just replicating sims. Like, I still believe that people are getting live reads or that they're making exploits.
For sure.
Or whatever.
I don't mean to pigeonhole him as like the furthest extreme.
No. I kind of feel like you're probably close to spot on about him, because he does seem to. I mean, I could be wrong too, but just like those high roller tournament pools, I think that I want to believe that there's still some exploits going on and some live tells and stuff like that. Yeah,
there just have to be with the people that are kind of showing up and winning. Like, it's not that guys like Bryn and Dan Smith and more of the old school live guys don't study. It's just more so that I think they're a lot closer to what I'm describing, which is getting the general knowledge base to create a baseline and then using that to model your thought process in game without restrictors, right? Like, just giving yourself the freedom to deviate at any given moment based off of a hunch or a physical tell that you may have or a bet pattern tell.
We're not allowed to do this kind of guy.
Yeah, I mean, you're allowed to do whatever the fuck you want, man. It's your money. Put it in the middle however you like.
Yo, we were at LAPC one year, and a friend of ours who was very deep in the Sims played a pot with this guy who had a gigantic beard and a white beater on. And he goes, yeah, so the river's like this, so I get to have some overbets here. And all of our friend Mike Delvecchio was like, you get to have some overbets. He's like, bro, this guy's got a massive beard and a wife beater on. Like, what do you mean we get to? You can do whatever you want, bro.
That's incredible.
100%.
So what do you think comes of this? Do you think that they're going to play heads up? Hellmuth replied, and he said, to me, the World Series of Poker is the big leagues. Always has been, always will be. It's aggravating to me when people lie about me and my legacy. For the record, I'm winning over 1.5 million in high rollers. Easy to confirm this on Hendon Mob. Well, it's not, but okay.
Yeah, that's what made me think. That's
why I got a little confused when he said Hendon Mob. Like, it doesn't tell you what your buy-ins are.
Yeah, people are bad at arguing. That's really all it comes down to.
That's what made me think that it was also cashes.
Right.
But
I'm very certain.
With what you said, and he said I'm winning. He didn't say I cashed for. He said he's winning. So
yeah, he also has like
take him for his word.
Yeah. And then he said, you said I wouldn't play you heads up. Where were you when I challenged the entire world to $1.6 million heads up challenge on high stakes duel? Hashtag positivity. Bryn fired back and said, we all know you cherry pick who you get to play in those duels. And I think he offered him another challenge of sort. I can't find the tweet in the thread now. But what do you think? Do you think, oh, here it is. I told PokerGo I'm ready to play from the beginning. We know you get to cherry pick who you were playing. Let me know when the offer is there to play me for $1 million. I'll be there. Also, if you want to showcase how good you aren't, I'm happy to crossbook 100% in any Triton series. Which, okay, anyway, regardless. Do you think anything comes of this?
Probably not. We'll see.
Yeah.
I could imagine that the line would be no.
Should we talk about it every day until something happens?
Yeah.
Day 200.
You guys
Day
should
200.
just, yeah, just keep pushing it,
What's going on here?
Right.
You guys should just instigate this until it.
I would love to play Hellmuth heads up in cash, not in a tournament format. But
right.
I mean,
I don't even think he would ever do that.
Yeah, I would love to watch that. That'd be a fun heads up match. I feel like you might even get a little bit of shit talking going between the two of you.
We would have a lot because
like friendly, but
we would definitely just have a lot because like I like Phil and I think he likes me as well. But there's also just like this heavy level of competition between us where I don't think either of us respect each other's game all that much, and that just usually leads to good banter as well as good competition. But what I realize removed from the airball match is that if you study heads up at all and get the fundamentals down and play somebody who hasn't, they're fucked. There's just no winning.
Yeah, heads up is the best example of like if you have good fundamentals, it's going to be so hard to beat that.
Yeah, it's such a technical game.
Yeah.
And it's not if you have two people who have never looked at anything, that's just two monkeys throwing shit at the wall. But if you have any technical sense of how heads up is supposed to work mechanically speaking, how the money's supposed to go in, where the thresholds lie, what the bet sizings look like, the other person is just stone dead. Because when you try to take ring play over to the heads up arena and apply it to your candidates when facing, like you face 150% pot in ring, you would never consider bottom pair, or at least very rarely would you consider bottom pair continue. But in heads up, it's like hard to fold it.
Yeah, that's what I kind of meant to say was like, I didn't mean to just like parrot exactly what you said, but more so like when you play heads up, like minimum call down frequencies or whatever the phrase is called
MDF,
actually matter.
Yeah.
When you're playing full ring, it's a little more in the air whether that kind of stuff matters because ranges can just sort of change, and because there's multiple players, we don't really have a grasp on what GTO actually means.
Yeah,
but when
ranges
you play
are
heads
tighter,
up,
betting frequencies are fucked.
Yeah, and like you don't know where like EVs get moved to when mistakes are made because there's multiple players at the table. Whereas like when you play in multi-way scenarios, but like when you play heads up, the anytime you do anything outside of equilibrium, it's going to the other player. So like if you don't call down enough on the flop or whatever, if you don't call enough on the flop, like that value is going to them regardless of like how they get it. Like if their bluffs make more of pot share or something goes on. And so yeah, it's kind of like a very a tough game to escape from.
Yeah, you're in the cage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're absolutely in the cage. There's no taking a hand off.
Yeah.
Every single time that you fold, that money goes directly to your competitor and like just increases your loss rate. There's no way to recoup it off of somebody else, right? Like if you're too tight in a certain node, you don't have a different player in the game donating to that node that allows you to correct course, right? Like it's just you and this other guy who's just beating you down for your mistakes. And that's really what it comes down to. It's like if you can, with any precision whatsoever, recognize an imbalance in your opponent, they're just fucked. There's just no escaping it, you know? What were you going to say, LeMay?
I was just saying how you always say that like EV is not created or destroyed. It's just moved, like, and that goes to what you said. Like, yeah, so it moves around the table, right? But when you're playing heads up, it can only go to the other player.
Yeah.
Which is, it's just very, you know, fun, like funny to think about.
It's why it's a dying game too, right? So like all of this always distills down to like, oh, well, challenge me heads up. It's like, it's tough. because why would anybody get good at it, right? Like personally, like I'm glad that it happened because it gives me greater context to my ring strategy and like where you can kind of like press the edges a little bit harder, so to speak, or let off the gas. You know what I mean? Because like you might find an overbet in heads up that like is kind of capped at pot whenever you're playing ring just based off of the range shape, but like it forces you to fully understand that range shape and how it's going to navigate street over street. But if you're starting your career out and you're like, oh, I'm going to dive headfirst into heads up, it's like, why? Like you're not going to make any money.
It was so exciting to do that back in the day, and then heads up just got completely killed by RTA and bots and all these other things. I'm pretty good friends with the guy who was like a top 10 heads up sit and go player. He played like the 5Ks on Stars in the world, and all of a sudden people started using this software that came out, and he was losing like overnight. And he was like, I played a bunch of the guys I knew were using it, tried to figure it out, and didn't, and lost, and that's the end of it's crazy. Very sad. By the way, Bryn said that Hellmuth's been cherry picking. To be fair to Hellmuth, if he was cherry picking, he would not have played Jason Kuhn heads up. Jason's
right.
That's true. Yeah.
Jason's a great heads up sit and go player from what I understand. And he's just the kind of guy who's obviously very good at studying and executing. And if he's going to play a big heads up match for a lot of money, he will study the shit out of that game and get very good.
I know what he did to study for that because he helped me a little bit with airball, and he let me in on his process and everything. And I have to tell you, whatever you think, like whatever you have in mind for the work that he put into that heads up match, take it times 100.
Yeah, it's like that.
I promise you, he could have told Hellmuth what he ate for breakfast the day that they played. Like he was that fucking dialed in.
Wow. Yeah, he performed really well too. He executed fantastically.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like there was, I wish that A, we were sharp, and B, that there was a betting market, because that may have been the closest thing we've seen in poker to McGregor
and Mayweather.
Wow, yeah.
Maybe not because of the natural variance of heads up sit and goes.
Yeah.
Honestly,
they were very deep though. They were very deep.
Yeah. And honestly, like, not that I'm anywhere near as skillful as Jason when it comes to heads up, but like the disparity between me and airball might have been greater, just because we were hundreds, if not thousands of blinds deep, and that the blinds don't ever go up. So the variance is like really, really, really low.
Sorry, what, you won $1 million?
Yeah.
And what stakes did you kept at the same stakes? Okay. So you won 2,500 big blinds.
Yeah.
I mean, you can run good and win that, but it's like, you know, it depending on edge, like it's going to be very difficult, and you have to do it somewhat early in the session.
No, I for sure ran good.
No, but I mean, if you're like the losing player in it, you can run good and win that many buy-ins or that many big blinds, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But like, depending on how big of a dog, let's say he is, since he lost, it's a lot to overcome. It's a lot of variance to overcome that, like any sort of reasonable edge for 2,500.
Right.
Big
yeah.
blinds.
I mean, obviously I ran very well. I won, I think, roughly 50 big blinds an hour.
But that probably just allowed you to win it quicker.
Holy crap, 50 big blinds an hour. Probably not sustaining that.
No, no.
Like,
no, not even close. I for sure ran well. But I talked to Doug about this. He basically said, like, he was telling me that he thinks that I was barely winning, and that if the match continued, I probably would have lost. Like Nick would have continued to get better, yada, yada, yada. And I just didn't like know how to say it without sounding arrogant, but I was like, he could not win. I don't think you understand. Like, and I know Doug understands. That's the thing. I know he understands the concept of a studied player versus somebody who's never ever studied in their life. The person who hasn't studied just can't win, especially being that deep. But what I tried to explain to him was, of course, I'm not winning 200 big blinds per 100. Of course, that's obvious, right? So of course I ran well. That goes without saying. But I didn't run like 10x above my expectation, I don't think. I imagine I was probably winning like 15 big blinds an hour, maybe somewhere in that neighborhood, 15 to 20. And that's super high, but on average, we're playing 500 or 600 big blinds deep.
I mean, I don't know how crazy high it is because I think Doug said across his career he won like 10 to 12.
Per 100, though.
Oh, what are you saying?
Per hour.
Per hour?
Yeah.
How many hands do you think you played heads up per hour? Like 40, 30?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. So maybe 2.5x that win rate.
Yeah.
But Doug's career is mostly 100 big blind poker, too. So the win rate's naturally going to be more capped.
Yeah.
We were playing
super deep.
We probably played 15 hours, 1,000 big blinds effective. And like,
yeah, I mean, you're going to have higher win rates, especially if you're the better heads up player, but you're also the better deep stack player. That's going to have huge implications. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's hard to model because I don't think we have much data on that deep of poker play heads up. Like we have very little probably. And
we don't.
So it's hard to tell. Like you can ask like Doug and his crew what their win rates were at 100 big blinds and 200 big blinds deep and get some sort of answer.
But even still, like they're playing against competent opponents.
Yeah,
that's
usually
the big thing that I can't get across enough. Like, and I'm not even saying this to slight Nick. It's just if anybody was watching, you would understand. He had no shot. Like he just truly does not understand game theory, even at the simplest levels, right? Like he doesn't understand bet sizing and what drives it. He doesn't understand ranges and what incentivizes their constructions. You know what I mean? Like, I think a perfect example of like how much win rate is truly available was we played a hand where I opened button, he 3-bet, I called. It came 7-6 deuce, I believe, with 2 hearts, and I have pocket 7s with the 7 of hearts. Oh, sorry, 7-6 deuce rainbow, pocket 7s with the 7 of hearts. He bets, I think he bet big. I think he bet like 3/4 maybe. I call. Turn is the ace of hearts. He bets 3/4 again. I call. River is the king of hearts. Backdoor flush completes. He bets 3/4 pot again. And we have like, I want to say I jammed for like 100% pot. So SPR on River was probably like 3 or 4. 4 or 5 maybe, something like that. We were really deep. This ends up being like I don't know, maybe 700 or 800 big blind pot. So I jam for value. It's thin, but like I think this is the bottom part of what I can be jamming here. Mm-hmm. He shouldn't really have too many backdoor flushes given that I block the 7. The 6 is a heart. He probably doesn't have 2x of hearts in the 3-bet range, and then the ace and the king fell. So it's like he's got to find a way to have like Jack 10 or Queen 10 or Queen Jack here somehow. It's going to be pretty tough. And I think he can call with worse. He should have 6s. He should have like Ace King a ton. He should have like Ace 6, Ace 7, Ace Deuce some of the time.
Yeah, I was going to say he's got like a lot of the suited 2 pairs.
Yeah. So they're all going to be indifferent versus the jam. And he's
also just got a bunch of like Ace Jack, Jack of hearts that might consider.
Well, he should. Whether or not he did, I don't know. Anyway, I jam for value here. He tanks for a long time and then mucks. And he has aces.
Wait, you said there was an ace on the board, right?
Yeah, he had top set.
So it's just like,
and you windmilled it in his face.
No. He didn't. I didn't find out he had aces until like a month later when they did their podcast, and he was going.
Oh, he
over
didn't
the
show.
So they did a podcast about it.
Right.
They're going over the hand history, and he's telling Ishan and Lynn that he's 100% certain I'm never bluffing here. Which, to be fair, I wasn't bluffing.
You weren't bluffing, right?
And it would be very hard to find bluffs. But his hand just beats value, and
I was going to say, you forgot to ask the fundamental question of, do I beat value?
He just theoretically, he just theoretically doesn't get it, right? So Ishan actually texts me while they're recording the podcast, asking me what I had, and I said I didn't even ask what he had in return. I just said, "Oh, I had top set of 7s. I assume he folded Ace King or like made a bad fold with a bluff catcher, or maybe not even a bad one, just." One that was indifferent. And he goes, he had aces, LOL. And I'm reading the text like in Brown Ballow's voice where he's like, he had aces. You know what I mean? And then there was another hand, and this one he ended up folding correctly, but it was again a 3-bet pot. He 3-bet me, I call. Comes ace, queen, jack. I have ace, queen. He c-bets, I call. Turn, queen. He c-bets again, I call. River, brick. He bets 100,000, I think, into maybe 80K or so.
So it's ace, queen, jack, queen,
brick.
Okay. And what do you have?
Ace, queen.
Okay.
So I go call, and then he bets like pot-ish on the end, or I'm pretty sure he overbet. He bet 100,000. The pot might have been like 80K or 75K or something like this. And I was actually a little bit nervous because what I knew about him having done the data scrape is that he never bluffs for an overbet. But I'm only beaten by one hand, and it's exactly one combo of aces. So it's like, okay, obviously I have a clear jam here. So I jammed for 290K total. So basically like almost 3x his bet. He tanks forever and then folds jacks. And it's like, okay, good read. I wasn't bluffing here, but I for sure have bluffs. And if you're folding jacks all the time, or really even maybe ever, you might just be getting torched in these sort of nodes, because for you, this is too much money going into the pot for me to show up with an inferior hand to jacks.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I only see big blinds and percentage of the pot. And so I just recognize that I have a jamming range on the end. And I'll certainly have enough Queen X to turn into a bluff here that I don't need to worry about being imbalanced in some sort of capacity.
I was wondering if he'd rather call with like king queen because you want to bluff with ace jack. I'm not sure if you want to bluff with a queen or if you want to bluff with ace jack.
I ran the spot. It's been a long time. I'm more confident, I think, that the queen X bluffs for me. But I agree with you that I think ace jack was also a really, really, really high up bluffing candidate.
Okay, I was going to say, I was just thinking that...
Because I think the difference is the queen calls some of the time.
Yeah, I was going to say queen probably just calls a lot and like loses, but you know, whatever.
Yeah.
You lose some chunk, you only need like 40% or something like that.
Yeah.
What is it? 100 to win 80, so...
100 to win 180.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to speak about the sim because it's been so long since I ran it. So you might be right instinctually, like ace jack may actually be better. But the other thing is, like, would he even take this line with king queen? So he might be near top with jacks. It doesn't
so you think
matter.
He just wouldn't overbet king queen?
Probably not.
Wow, that's a big mistake, obviously. Well, I mean, if you're going to talk about like leaks, like if you feel pretty confident about that, that's like pretty wild, I feel like.
Yeah, I'm giving hand examples for like things that are maybe like minor leaks when it's all said and done.
I'm not like going against.
No,
like,
no,
I'm not saying these aren't.
No, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right. But I'm overlooking like a lot of the simplest mechanics that he was actually the worst at, which were just like simple sizing errors.
Mm-hmm.
His overbets were greatly imbalanced towards value, and they were never thin enough. It was like straight fucking nuts. And obviously in heads up, like you have like there's so many instances where like middle pair pairs, but you're still overbetting like top pair of aces, you know, and like that's just a no-brainer because of how wide ranges are and how much people have to bluff catch with and stuff like that. And it just like it was just the only way I can convey it is it was a ring strategy. It was a 9 max type of strategy whenever you look at the thresholds of how he would choose his actions. And to me, that just offers enough win rate to the other person where we start to see astronomical returns and very low variance.
Yeah, I think your win rate must skyrocket whenever you have sizing tells. I've had like a few heads up matches in my life where I had like pretty distinct sizing tells on people. And I must have run well, but like I've always won at an astronomical win rate.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one player I really feel like I ran below all in EV and I played them all night. And they were just literally half potting whenever they were bluffing and potting whenever they had the nuts. And it was PLO.
So nice.
Dude, I won 30 buy-ins at 5'10". I played all night. Yeah, it was sick. Like, and it's like, yes, I definitely ran well in other ways, but like I'm almost certain I ran below all in EV and I just like, it just couldn't lose.
That's very easy to do. By the way, that's also very easy to do the deeper you get because you're never all in.
Yeah.
Right. So in our match, we were very, very rarely all in. And to be fair, like I definitely ran above average in all in EV. There was a time where he stop and go'd me. And we got it in where I had like ace king versus his jacks on king jack X, where he like called a 5-bet pre. Called a 5-bet. Yeah, called a 5-bet pre. No, I was in position. So called a 4-bet pre. And then he just like open jams on king jack X for like pot, and I call off obviously, and hit running Broadway.
That is nice. Yeah.
So it's like, that's running well above all in EV. There were a few examples of that, but the deeper you get, you're just not really all in, especially if you know the other person only really puts their chips in the middle nutted. So you're never calling all in either, unless you have it.
Yeah.
So you get to be the guy who's all in a lot with a balanced range and picking up these abandoned pots that aren't going to get fought for wide enough, as well as, extracting value whenever you have the top of range and you think you've cooled them off, whatever. But then you also are never really at risk for these all-in pots because you understand that their range tends to just be way too tight since they're bringing a ring strategy over to heads up. So it wasn't like I was trying to proclaim that like I'm the greatest heads up player of all time and I have the biggest win rate in the history of man. But what I am saying is that when you have a skill discrepancy or a studied discrepancy maybe, that is that vast, isolated in a heads up dynamic, win rates are fucking big. I estimated my win rate was 2.5 big blinds whenever I did the variance calcs for this match, trying to figure out like how much of myself I should keep and how much I should sell. And even with like that low of a win rate, the risk of ruin like on $1 million, 2,500 250 buy-ins. Is that right?
25 buy-ins.
25 buy-ins.
Right?
Yeah, sorry, 2,500 big blinds. Yes. Yeah, you're right. The risk of ruin on that was still like relatively low.
What was it, like a few percent or?
I think I think its recommendation to be sub 5% risk of ruin was to have $700,000, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
So having the $1 million bankroll was
you were you were like 3 or 4.
The expectation was that we would never really reach it. That basically the average win or loss over the 100 hours was going to be like something in the neighborhood of, I think it was like 180K. Mm-hmm. So the swing was supposed to be really low.
What win rate was this? Sorry.
At like 2.5 big blinds per 100.
That's it?
Yeah. And I was giving it high variance also of like 200 big blinds per 100 standard deviation because we were playing deep.
Yeah. Wow.
You end up winning $1 million in what, like 60 some hours?
48 hours.
48 hours.
Or 58 hours, something like that.
You should go on an episode of the first 48, man. Get it? Because you caused a murder?
I get it.
Good one. Oh, man.
That was good,
I'm
Jess.
standing by that joke.
No,
like
you
it.
should.
I like it.
You got to stand. By the way, we got to keep you in this chair moving forward.
I like this chair, but I
you
can't.
look great.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
You look great, and also like
but then
you look so short over there.
Yeah.
I do look quite short over there.
Yeah,
but
we have a lot of space.
No, I don't look as great next to this,
No, but you look tall.
model over here.
You look a lot taller.
There
I
you
do.
go.
That's true. Yeah.
Landon fucking dwarfs you, man.
I know. Well, wait, have you seen him? The goddamn giant.
I have seen him.
Just remind me to push your chair up towards the camera tomorrow, and we'll even things out.
Oh, I like that.
Push me up a little.
I'm
bit.
gonna sit
Yeah.
up straight.
I keep trying to sit up.
What if I said I'm gonna sit up straight?
So
and I'm
these
actually
chairs
like
are
6'7"?
comfortable, and you tend to just slouch into them, right? And I have to keep going like this.
Yeah, they're
It looks
nice.
like- yeah.
This chair is way better. That one I was like sinking.
Everybody likes
into.
these chairs. I'm never
Yeah.
giving this one up.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd feel bad, taking Landon's chair.
Yeah.
that's true.
It's really very cozy over here.
We do have to keep the kid showing up, and he does like his comfy. He abuses the chair though. Like there are days where he's like almost laying in it.
He is feet are up on the
Almost
thing.
laying.
And just,
He's
yeah.
definitely laying in that chair.
Mhm.
It's too much. All right.
Landon's got kind of a house caddy vibe, doesn't
Yeah.
he?
That's
I'm
great.
a huge Landon fan, man. It's so funny that he like is dialed into The Sims, and then he's just like got the most chill house caddy demeanor about life. And
He's a wacky one. We're gonna get him snowboarding this winter though. By the way,
nice.
can we please get something on the fucking books?
yeah, let's do it.
I missed
I'm ready.
all last season and the season before because none of my friends go anymore.
I'm fired up. My cousin and his family just moved to Park City.
Oh, I love
Park
So
Park
I
City.
want to like go visit that. Yeah,
That'd be great.
And then also we should just go to Tahoe sometime.
100%. And I also think Uncle Dan is moving from Tahoe to Denver.
I think I already did.
Oh, it's happened?
I think so.
I didn't know that. Okay, so we have a reason to go to Colorado now too.
So I got a Denver trip at some point. I don't know when, but this winter for snowboarding with some friends too. So
Okay.
we should coordinate.
Okay, I'm in. Let's
Sweet.
fucking go. Thank you for joining us again on short notice. We were short staffed today and we needed you, buddy. You carried this show.
I mean, if you didn't,
Yeah,
if you didn't show
carried
up, it was just gonna be Berkey and I for 90 minutes talking about Pittsburgh sports.
Right. Which is exactly what we're going to do tomorrow.
Wants, yeah. Exactly.
Worst things have happened, boys.
Right, that's true. Thank you guys as always for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. We are going to be back tomorrow. Obviously, we'll catch up on any new news that breaks. We're going to be coming to you in the evening, 6 p.m. tomorrow. I have an early seat in Bobby's room, so we got to bump this to the evening. We're going to be joined by Mark Goon a little ways through after we get through our Weekend Warrior bit in the early going. So if you want to tune in at 6:30, Mark should be on by then. We're going to go through some strat chat, and we're going to talk about his attempt to win $100 an hour at low stakes 2-5 no limit. Thank you guys for all the support this week. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Peace.
Peace.